Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. And we seek refuge in Allah from the evils of ourselves and the evils of our actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, none can lead astray. And whomsoever Allah leaves to go astray, none can guide. Before we start, the sweet and handsome young brothers, okay? Pay attention because we try to focus on you today. All right? Okay? This is a dardasha, as the brothers have told me, that it has become a tradition in Abu Huraira, where people share their personal views and their personal aspirations. And it is an eye-opener, I believe, to Muslims living in the West. Actually, to Muslims all around the world. We'll just try to highlight some of the issues that really concern the Muslims who are living in the West. Now, I would say we would try to direct the message to the youth. And when I talk about the youth, I'm talking about youth of the heart. So if you have white hair like myself, consider yourself to be a youth. Because youth is not measured by years or how many years you've spent in this world. There's much more to identity, there's much more to performance, there's much more to the contribution that you can come up with, even at a later stage of your life. Now, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, some of them embraced Islam at a later stage of their lives, and they made a big difference. They really made a big difference. What we will be talking about, inshallah, today with the brothers, and with yourself as well. So it's going to be a highly interactive session. So don't expect yourself to sit down and relax and chill. We'll put you on the hot seat. We'll get you involved, and if you don't put your hand up, we'll pick you up, inshallah. Okay? So be vigilant, because I'll throw some questions on you. If you're not ready, you won't be able to deal with it. I just want to highlight something about the state of the Muslim Ummah. And no one argues with the fact that Muslims are not in a good state today. We are on a downhill, and we're not doing well as an Islamic Ummah, especially compared to the history of the Muslims, or the bright history of the Muslims in all aspects of life, in terms of how the Prophet ﷺ established the first Muslim state, and how he educated the companions, how he cultivated them to a very high standard. The companions are a really phenomenal generation. The kind of transformation they went through is phenomenal. There's nothing like that in the history of humanity. They were the lowest of all nations, and within about 23 years they became the best nation ever raised forth for mankind, ever, throughout history and even in the future. There will be nothing like that. Now, the good news is that this beautiful experience can be replicated. It can be repeated, and definitely not according to the same standards, but at least we can achieve something significant, or a significant portion of what was achieved by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And the Messenger ﷺ promised that this will happen. One day, it will be the reality of this ummah, that the ummah, and this is something we will talk about today and tomorrow, inshallah, that this ummah will come back to its glory. Now, obviously, things don't happen in a magical way. All of a sudden, the ummah becomes strong. It is something that we have to work our way through. We have to build it. We have to be aware of what stage we are in, and what is our final destination? Where are we trying to get to? So I will try to provide a few points that we can start with. So our discussion will be informed, inshallah, and we'll try to set the territory clear of what we are trying to talk about today. One issue is one fundamental issue in the life of Muslims, and I believe in my last visit to Toronto, I spoke about this, but I'll try to highlight it a bit more today with more detail and take it from a different angle. The issue of identity. One of the most important aspects of human life, human existence, is identity. When we talk about identity, mainly the way it's been portrayed, in the media, in Muslim books, in Muslim conferences, is that it's all related to color, language, background, and religion. But we hardly hear any scientific, scholarly breakdown of what identity really means. To start with, as human beings, it is human, or the human nature is based on one important issue. It is at the heart of our existence. This issue is worship. Now, it is human to worship. So anyone comes up to you and says, I don't believe in a religion. I don't have a religion. Be sure that this person doesn't know what he's talking about. It is human to worship. And in a broader sense, everything you do, everything you think about, every move you make, every step you take, emanates from worship. In some way or another. How does this work out? How can we explain it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran clearly, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. MashaAllah, the young ones are awake. Good sign. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and humanity except to worship me. Now when we make something as humans, when we make, for example, when we manufacture cars, what do we make them for? For driving, for transport. When somebody manufactures a pen, what do they make it for? For writing. So essentially, the car does driving, because this is what it's made for. This is what it's created for. Human beings are created to worship. So everything you do, in a broader sense, is worship, or emanates from worship. And I'll explain it a bit more. I hope I'm not speaking Chinese so far. The issue of worship goes with identity. It goes with identity. Can anyone tell me what identity means? What do you think identity means? It's a very elusive term. What does identity mean? Okay, can I get answers? Okay, let's take this first one. Sorry? Thank you very much. That's a very beautiful answer. Identity means how you define yourself. Imagine identity, even in English, where does it come from? Identity comes from identify. How do you identify yourself? In other words, how you define yourself. Okay, what other answers do we have? What do we mean when we talk about identity? Yes, the young brother there. Can you speak up? Personal information about yourself. That's another puzzle. I'm trying to solve the puzzle of identity. What does identity mean? When I say that's my identity, how do we form our identity? Is it based on color? Language? Country of origin? Where does identity come from? Huh? Speak up, please. Date of birth. Okay. So people who were born in the same month, they have a special identity. Okay. What you do, that's a very brilliant answer, mashallah. What you do. So is identity something passive or active? That's another question. Okay, let me take Brother Umar. MashaAllah. The brothers of Montreal are taking it over. Identity, most of the time we like to view it as something passive. We have no choice about. Yes? Color, language, background, a religion we are born with. That's what our identity is. But identity is not so. Identity is something proactive. It's something you choose for yourself. You choose your identity. And if you don't choose it, others will choose it for you. Others will choose it for you. We had one answer here, yes? Personal profile. It's getting more complicated. MashaAllah. These are the young ones. MashaAllah. Very good answer, but it needs explanation. Okay, let me take one hand here. On your character. That's a bit still elusive. I need something more specific. I agree with you, but I'm trying to break it down. Okay, I'll take two more answers from the back. I'll leave the younger ones. I'll save you for something, inshallah, more important. Okay. Others? So belonging, cooperating, and association. Okay. These are actually the features of identity. But I need what's the reality of identity. No problem. Brother Umar gave us a very good answer. Let me show you. Now Muslims, regardless of their background, ideally speaking, someone comes from Somalia, someone comes from Saudi, someone comes from Pakistan, someone comes from India, okay, someone comes from Europe, someone comes from Canada. And surprisingly, ideally, they have the same identity. Isn't that true? They're supposed to have the same identity. Bilal, may Allah be pleased with him, was from Abyssinia, from Africa. And Suhaib al-Rumi, although there's a difference of opinion, he was originally from Asham. From Asham, he was a Roman, which is the European race. Okay? And Salman al-Farisi was a Persian. And they had the same identity. The same identity. Now, let's move to another stage, talking about identity. I just want to explain what Brother Umar said. How do human beings process information? How do we deal with the world around us? Do you know, we are creatures of communication, by the way. We are creatures of communication. What do we do in this life? From the date of your birth to the date you depart this world, what do you do? What's the main thing you do? You're doing, about 24 hours, you're doing that thing. What is it? Yes, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. Eat. Speak up. Da'wah. No. Every human being does there's something that you do consistently. Imran. Process. That's part of it. Right to the back. Reading. Breathing. Okay, I'll save you the time. So I don't want to step over the. Okay, I'll take one answer. One answer. This one. Talking. Okay. What we do is communication. It's, as humans, the most important thing we do, as human beings, we interact with the world around us. Now imagine a person who cannot see, cannot hear, cannot feel or touch, and cannot smell. What kind of human being that is? Totally outside this world. No life. There's no life. So what we do basically, we communicate with the world. That's what we do. As human beings, we have an internal world and an external world. We communicate with the universe around us. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادُ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. That's what we do. Imagine, we have two ways of communication. Inward and outward. We have an input and output. The input is what we receive from the outside world, from the external world, through our senses. Eyes, ears, smell, taste, touch. Do you receive information from other than your senses? Basically, no. That's where you receive information. Then you start to process it. That's all a state of communication. Now the output is what? What you do, what you say. That's your output that you give to the world. This is what all human beings basically do. We receive information from the world, we process it in a certain way, and then we give the world our output. Does anyone disagree with this? That's what human beings do. Now let's get back to the issue of identity. How do we deal with the world? How do we communicate with the world around us? And sorry to give this analogy, which I don't really prefer, but because it serves our purposes. Anyone who's in IT? Who's in IT? Who knows much about computers? Okay. How do computers deal with information? Like, for example, a name of a person. Give the name of a person to the computer. How is it represented in the computer, inside the PC? How is it? Binary system. Binary system. So how does the computer deal with devices? A printer? What? Photocopier? Okay, whatever it is. How does the computer deal with that? You need to define it, yes? There's a definition. What do you call this process? It's actually now Windows already has the automatic ability to define hardware. But in the past, you had a CD and you had to define it. Otherwise, the computer doesn't recognize it. And in order for us to deal with the world around us, human beings, objects, events, we have to define them. We have a binary system inside us, but it's a different system. We have a system through which we define things. It's a basic language through which we give value to things. You have two friends, okay? You appreciate one more than the other. Both of them are human beings. But why do you appreciate one more than the other? Because you have different definitions for them. How do you define people? How do you define objects? So in order to deal with the world around us, sorry, are you getting bored here? In order to define things around us, okay, we need to give them certain values. Why do some people mean a lot to you and other people don't mean a lot to you? Why do you appreciate some aspects of life and other aspects you don't appreciate them? Why? Depends on your definition. It depends on your definition. Something could be insignificant to you but vitally important to another person. Why? Depending on the definition. Islam is important in our lives because we have a certain definition of it. Other people have a different definition of Islam, so they're not concerned about it. Okay? Now, when we are born, the first thing we do, we define ourselves. You have to define yourself. You have to define yourself. And I will explain how we define ourselves. Once we define ourselves, our definition of ourselves becomes the reference point. Based on our definition of ourselves, we define other things. And this is why people differ in defining different things. Let me give you the example. Someone who does driving for a living. Someone who does driving for a living. Okay? So without a driving license, he cannot work. Another person, he has all the facilities around his house and he doesn't actually really need to drive most of the time. Driving license to the first person is very important. But to the second one is less important. Why? It's the same driving license and both of them are human beings. Why is it more important to one man and less important to the other one? Can anyone give a clear answer? Relativity. I need something more specific. Why is it important for the one who does driving for a living and it's not important for another one? Why? Okay, that's part of it. Yes. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Basically, for the first person, it's about usefulness. It's about function. It's about function. Driving license is important to his own definition of himself. This is the way he sees himself. His function is to make a living through driving. Okay? So this is why it's valuable to him. It adds value to him. But the other person doesn't need it. It doesn't make any difference. So it doesn't do him a big function. And that's the difference. Okay. The young ones, stay calm. Inshallah, we'll get to you soon. Okay? So the first person, I mean, the value of driving license, it does a huge function, a huge benefit to him. And this is why it's of great value. If it's not of value or importance to you, you don't care about it. So the one person, I know that you got lost, sorry, the example wasn't probably practical enough, but I'm just trying to show you that we define ourselves based on our function. That's the language the whole world speaks. Look at anything in your life and try to see how much value you have given to that thing. You will recognize the things that are more important to you are the things that are useful, the things that you can use and benefit from. And if they are of no use or little use to you, they have little value. And what defines if something is useful or not? It's the function you choose for yourself. Someone is a sportsman, okay? So being fit is important to his function, is important to him. So if it's important to him, remaining fit is an important part of his life. But if you don't need to be fit in order to, function well in life, being fit is not an important thing to you. So it's based on how you define yourself. Now, people define themselves based on their function. And we define things in the world based on their function. This is how we define things in the world. Now, what is the meaning of worship? What is the meaning of worship? What's the meaning of worship? Worship. What is the reality, the essence of worship? Sincerity. Sincerity is part of worship, is one aspect of worship. Who can give me the essence of worship? Okay, these are the acts, that's the manifestation of worship, but what's the essence? I need the essence, right at the back there, yes. Now this, yes, uncle, yeah. Yes. Jazakallah khair. You know, the essence of worship is love. The essence of worship is love. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. And some people take partners along with Allah. They love them as much as they love Allah. So this is the essence of worship. Obviously it takes different manifestations. Now the reason I brought this up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for what? For worship. What is worship? It's a function. Worship is a function. So this is why we do worship with everything in our lives. Every activity that you have is some sort of worship. Is some sort of worship. Worship is our function. We were created to fulfill this function. If we don't fulfill that, what's the value of human beings? In reality, nothing. If we don't fulfill this function for which we were created, then actually our value goes down. Like you have a car, and the car, and I gave this example before, but I repeat it because it comes in handy. Now someone bought a car. His friend sees him a couple of days later, and he says to him, "How's your new car?" What does he say? His answer is, "I don't have a car," although he has it. Now it turns out that his son keeps taking the car, he drives to work, he comes back, he hangs around with his friends, and he doesn't bring the car home, except late at night. The father doesn't get to use it. So this is why he says, "I don't have a car." Why? Because the car doesn't serve the function that was supposed to, or it was bought in the first place for. Okay? So if human beings do not fulfill that function, they have no value in reality. And actually they have a negative value, which is a destructive value. Now when we define ourselves as human beings, we define ourselves, this is what it means to be human, to fulfill your function. As it means, what does a car mean? Driving. If you have no driving, if you don't have this service, you don't have a car. If human beings do not do worship, which is the reason for which they were created, or the function for which they were created, they have no value. So this is why we define ourselves based on our function. What do we worship? Now I come back to the answer of the uncle, the meaning of worship, and now inshallah we will start very soon. Just give me a couple of minutes to clarify this. Worship means love. Worship means love. Do you know that what we do throughout our lives is love? Is love. People have different words for it. People have different words for it. And based on love, you define yourself. Now, how do human beings function, generally speaking? Through motivation. So when people talk about love, they call it motivation. Today, they call it purpose. they call it meaning, they call it passion. They have different names for it, but it's the same thing. It's love, and it is worship. So if someone comes to you, and this is basically what we do as human beings, we make an image of something, we love it, and after we develop this passion towards it, what happens? We pursue it. Now ask yourself, what do you do in life? What are your aspirations in life? That's your religion. That's your deen. It's what you love and what you pursue in your life. That's deen. Okay? So now when someone comes to you and they say, we don't believe in a religion, we don't have a religion, that's not true. Religion, unfortunately, has lost its meaning as a word. Even, unfortunately, in the Arabic language today, it's misunderstood by the majority of people. A deen means your passion in life. What is the ultimate love in your life? What is your passion in life? What is your purpose? What is the thing that you hang your value on as a human being? Identity of Muslims is supposed to be the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Identity that we have is supposed to be the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the beautiful thing about this identity, that it takes different manifestations. It's the basic form of love which encompasses your life. And then it actually gives rise to every other activity in your life. So when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you pray. You start to love prayer. Why? Because it brings you closer to Allah. It enhances your love of Allah. Now someone loves soccer or football. They like to play football. Anything that helps them become better at football becomes dearer to them. You want to achieve financial security or independence. You want to become independent, financially independent. Any kind of job that seems to pay off well becomes dearer to you. Why? Because it serves your purposes. It has a function to you. And that's exactly what religion basically means. So atheists, agnostic, each one of them, they have something they love. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ta'isa abdul dinar, ta'isa abdul dirham." And he said another hadith, "Ta'isa abdul zawja." He said, woe to the slave of the dinar, of the dollar, of money. Why? Because money has become their ultimate love that drives everything in their lives. It's at the bottom of every action they do. You see? This is how they define themselves. So you define yourself around your passion in life. You love football so much that it actually affects everything in your life. It affects your decisions. It affects your likes and your dislikes. It becomes your God and it becomes your identity. Someone loves a woman so much that this love absorbs their hearts. This is how they define themselves. So what they like, what they dislike, what they do, what they chase after is all defined by that love. Anything brings them closer to their love is dearer to them. Anything that pushes them away from their love is detested to them. They hate it. They turn away from it. This is what worship means. So the Muslims are supposed to define themselves around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is your ultimate love. And by the way, this is how our hearts are created. This is why Imam Ibn al-Qayyim says human beings have two qualities. And this is, if you really study yourself well, that you will see that you are doing this throughout your life. We have two faculties. We have two things that we do that encompass everything in our lives. We have the power of comprehension. Al-Quwwatul Ilmiyya, he calls it. Okay? We can perceive things. We can see, we can understand, we can comprehend. That's number one. So we form images of things. We form definitions of things. That's number one. Number two, once you form a definition of something, you react to it dynamically. So there's static, which is you form an image, and there's a dynamic, which how you act to that.
So this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, النظرة سهم من سهام الشيطان. You know, a look, your gaze, it could be one of the spears of shaitan. Because once you see, for example, an attractive woman, straight away you form an image in your heart about that woman. And don't think that this static state will remain as it is. It gives rise to what? Desire. When you understand the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is an impression about Allah in your heart. And this is what we call aqeedah. You see, sometimes the word makes it complicated, but it's very simple. What does aqeedah mean? Aqeedah means, what is your impression about Allah? What's in your heart about Allah? How do you view Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is your impression about the names and attributes of Allah? Once you form an impression in your heart about Allah or about anything, your heart will move either towards it or against it. Okay, so the Muslim is supposed to define himself based on the names and attributes of Allah. Once you have the correct understanding about Allah, your heart will develop the passion, will develop the what? The desire, will develop the motivation, will develop the strength that you bring about and through which you function. Okay, this is how this is a summary of life. This is a summary of life. This is how we human beings function. This is how we do things. This is how we react to the world. And this is how we define ourselves. So basically, human beings don't define, some people define themselves, by the way, through their physical state. They look at their physique, around their body. Some people define themselves around their brains, their intellect. Some people define themselves around something external. Something like, as I said, money, reputation, their wife, their children. And that's a mistake. That's a mistake. We have to define ourselves totally based on our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Based on our love. Now sometimes, let me give this example which is very practical. If a person is injured, for example, they lose a leg, or you lose your hand, for example, does it hurt a lot? Does it hurt a lot? Even about your image, about yourself, the image you have about yourself? Many people feel frustrated about it. It could destroy some people's lives. If it happens, this person has defined himself greatly around his body. The way they look is very important in their definition of themselves. And that's a mistake. Some people define themselves around their financial states. So when they are rich, when they are well off, they feel confident and they feel all right. But when they are poor, when they suffer from some kind of financial loss or setback, they feel bad about themselves. A person who's handsome, they tend to define themselves around their beauty. If they have an accident and they lose that beauty, their definition of themselves is zero. And this is when they lose confidence and they lose hope in life. A person defines himself around his girlfriend. She leaves him. What does he do? Commit suicide. Because his definition is gone. No definition. So, who are you? It's your definition of yourself. What is your definition of yourself? It's your passion in life. It's your passion in life. Some people define themselves around football. Their life is all about that sport, or basketball. That's their life. If they lose it, they're out of balance. But the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, in the battle, many times, when they talk, even younger people, young as these ones, like Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh. Anyone heard of their story? Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh in the Battle of Badr. Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh, two young children. They were around 13, 14, 15. Two young children. One of them, Mu'awwidh, when he hit Abu Jahl, Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, took revenge for his father. So he hit this little boy with his sword. What happened? I mean, the boy himself narrates the story. He hit him on his shoulder, and do you know what? He cut his arm. And it kept hanging through a little piece of skin. It was hanging. And do you know what he says? This young man, about 14 years old, he says, in the battle, it became a burden on me. I couldn't fight and defend myself. So what he did, he stepped on it and he pulled it. His definition of himself, his composure was still there. Why? Because he did not define himself around his body. Now imagine sometimes a person loses a finger and it takes them months to recover. Psychologically, I'm saying. Psychologically to recover. Do you know why sometimes in arguments you feel offended? You have an argument or you have a conversation, you are sitting with some people. Still okay? You feel a bit offended. Someone says a word and you feel offended. Why? Not exactly. Not exactly. Do you know why? Because they said something that has violated your definition of yourself. Violated your definition of yourself. For example, you define yourself around your reputation, how people see you. This, they call it, in today, they call it extrinsic. Something from the external world. You define yourself upon something from the external world. Okay? Once you define yourself around something physical, around something other than the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you become vulnerable, weak. People can get to you, people can destroy your confidence. Let me define that, or let me explain it. Someone, the way he views himself, the way he defines himself is how other people look at him. This is where self-esteem comes from. Self-esteem comes from your definition of yourself. There's no fixed thing called self-esteem. You choose what your self-esteem is. The Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, they called him a magician, they called him a liar, they called him all names. And he was the most honored among them, the most respected before the message. And that never, ever violated his self-esteem. He kept composure. So someone defines himself around his reputation. If you call him a name, he's gone. He's gone. You have violated his definition. Someone defines himself around how he looks like or how she looks like. Once that is violated through any physical injury, the definition is what? Destroyed. It's thrown out of balance. People define themselves around, by the way, some young people define themselves around, on the car they have. So if they have an accident and the car crashes, believe me, they suffer psychological consequences. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us, this is why the believers are the strongest. If you define yourself around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love of Allah, no one can touch that. Can anyone stop you from loving Allah? No one can get to that. No one can get to that. But you define yourself around your love of your wife, she could die. She could leave you. So don't hang your definition on anything that people have control over. Define yourself around the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will be fortified, you will be safe. No one can get to you. Whatever people say to you, that can never touch you. You have strong walls, you have a strong armor, and people cannot break through that. And by the way, this gives you so much even physical strength. Am I coming up with something strange? Allah says this in the Quran. Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal, يا أيها النبي يحرض المؤمنين على القتال. O Messenger, O Prophet, incite the believers to fight in the sake of Allah. إيكم منكم عشرون صابرون يغلبوا مئتين. If there are 20 believers from among you, they can overcome, they can defeat 200. Am I joking? No. One can defeat 10. That's physical power. Pure physical power. Allah doesn't mention angels here. وَإِن يَكُن مِّنكُم مِّئَةٌ يَغْلِبُ أَلْفًا مِّنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. And if there are 100 of you, they will be able to defeat 1,000 from the disbelievers. Why? Allah concludes, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ أو بِأَنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ لا يفقهون. Because the believers do not comprehend the reality of this life. The disbelievers do not comprehend the reality of this life, so they have the wrong definition of themselves. They define themselves around what? Around money, status, their idols, the worship, whatever it is. But if you define yourself around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will get this physical power. Ibn al-Qayyim says this in his book Madarij al-Salikin. He says the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the remembrance of Allah has the ability, or you can survive on it. And I'm not sure if I should be mentioning this. I don't want to be labeled as such and such, but I'm quoting Ibn al-Qayyim, one of the greatest scholars of Ahlus Sunnah. But please understand me very well, pay attention. He says, with love of Allah and great remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can survive even for a while without food. That's physical power. Now don't ask me how, because I kept the brothers waiting for long. But what I'm talking about now is very important for our discussion. Now, a person defines himself around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the basic love. We have a hierarchy. We have levels of love. At the bottom, at the center of our love should be love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you define yourself around this, no one can touch you. No one can throw you out of balance. Even if people give you dirty looks as Muslims, they cannot touch your self-esteem. They cannot affect you. The reason why when we walk around, people give us dirty looks, we hear some bad comments, sometimes we feel bad about ourselves. And if it happens repeatedly, if you're affected by that repeatedly, you start to have a problem with your identity. So you want to look like others. You don't want to hear bad language. You don't want people to look, to give you certain looks. So what do? A brother has a beard, he cuts it short or he shaves it. Why? Because he wants to avoid this kind of psychological injury. People talk about me. So we try to change the external world, our body. No, it's inside you. Change the internal world. Strength is inside, it's not outside. And the problem with the brothers who feel offended when they are given dirty looks, or when they hear some kind of language, or when they are called names, or when someone calls you terrorists, you Muslims terrorists. We feel offended because you define yourself partly around how people look at you. That's a problem. That's a problem. This is when you become vulnerable. So define yourself around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can touch you. No one can affect you. Don't define yourself around your wife. You love her. But that's a secondary level of love. It follows from your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You love your wife, why? Because she is Muslim. You love your wife, why? Because she is with you on the same road to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You love your wife, why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to be dutiful to your family. You love your wife, why? Because she can help you make it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is how we should set our priorities in life and our relationship with everything. Everything should emanate from our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only then you can have some kind of a thematic unity in your life. You're one person. Many times we have duplicity of people. We have schizophrenia to a certain degree. Sometimes in one place you act in a certain way, in a different place you act in a different way. It happens with all of us. Sometimes you like something, the same thing, you like it, tomorrow you don't like it. Why? Something has changed in your definition of yourself. And it could be rapid. If it's rapid, that's dangerous. But if you define yourself solely around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will have a consistent character, a consistent definition, an absolute morality that doesn't change from day to day, from age to age. It's the same. So you'll have stability in your life, strength, and no one can get to you, and everything, you start to see the links, even with what type of food you eat. if you really define yourself well around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything will fall in place. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ, or the hadith that is narrated, the divine hadith, which the Prophet ﷺ defines, when he says, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh sorry, it's not a divine hadith, it's from the Prophet ﷺ. He says, "Man kanat ad-dunya hamma," the one whose passion, the one whose ultimate love is this dunya, money, wife, girlfriend, even children. It shouldn't be your main passion. It follows from your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyone who has part of this dunya to be his main passion in life, that is his definition. This is how we define ourselves. شَتَّتَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرَهُ. Allah will increase his worries and make them scattered. So his mind will be all around the place, chasing money, chasing his relationships, chasing his financial state, chasing his personal preferences. Every worries all around the place. شَتَّتَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرَهُ وَجَعَلَ فَقْرَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ. And Allah will make poverty in front of his eyes wherever he goes. وَلَمْ يَأْتِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَا كُتِبَ لَهُ. And he will get nothing of this dunya except, what Allah wrote for him. But وَمَنْ كَانَتِ الْآخِرَةُ هَمَّهُ. Whoever makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his passion, his ultimate love, his main concern. In other words, in our words, his definition. جَمَعَ اللَّهُ لَهُ أَمْرَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reduce all his worries into one. Will be one thing to focus on and you will be satisfied. جَمَعَ اللَّهُ لَهُ أَمْرَهُ وَجَعَلَ غِنَاهُ فِي قَلْبِهِ. Allah will put the sense of richness and sufficiency in his heart. وَأَتَتْهُ الدُّنْيَا وَهِيَ رَاغِمَةٌ. And this life will yield itself before him even against its will. Again, physical outcomes, tangible outcomes. When we really fall into this kind of harmony, if we really get to that, the world will change around us. Ibn Taymiyyah says a very beautiful statement, and inshallah we'll finish with this so we can start, and as we have the conversation we will add. Ibn Taymiyyah says a very beautiful statement. He says, every move in the heavens and the earth, the origin of it, apart from humanity and jinn, the origin of it is love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The rain falls because of love of Allah. The clouds move because of love of Allah. Vegetation grows because of love of Allah. Everything loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and out of this love it functions. The whole world. So once we make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our ultimate love, our ultimate passion, what happens? We are in a state of harmony with the whole world. And once we catch this harmony, we build on an already existent momentum. Powerful momentum. During the days of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, when he was the Khalifa, there are ample historical reports that wheat from which we make bread, one single grain of wheat was similar in size to the stone of a date. That's barakah. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا. If the people of the inhabitants of earth, if they have believed truly in Allah and had taqwa and consciousness about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We would have showered them with blessings from the heavens and the earth. Okay, we will start now. Okay, what's this? I can't read it. Okay, you sure? Okay, actually I want to get the brothers involved, so no problem. Okay. You're all right with that? I really apologize. But I got excited about this. Okay, before I carry on, everything I have said, probably was a bit confusing. I know, it was a bit confusing at the beginning. Did the lines link now? Okay, alhamdulillah. Did anyone lose his way through? Okay, alhamdulillah. I just want to make sure that you are following. By the way, this is what worship means. In simple words, this is what worship means. And believe me, the way, your ultimate passion is your definition of yourself. Is your definition of yourself. Now, when it is touched, when someone has access to it, they will have authority over you, power over you. And this is psychological authority. So, it's very dangerous to define yourself around your financial situation. Or define yourself around your body. And this is why when the kuffar, when the people of Quraysh, they got hold of Khabbab ibn al-Arat, they started cutting his body piece by piece. And they said to him, just swear at Muhammad, say a bad word about him. Would you like Muhammad to be in your place and you are safe with your family? What did he say? He said, no, I don't wish that the Prophet ﷺ even being hurt by a thorn, little pain, and I'm safe in my house. I prefer to die for him, and he's safe, he's intact, no problem with him, no pain. He has disengaged from his body, because you are not your body. In reality, don't define yourself around your body, because people have access to your body. They can torture you, they can put you in prison. And if your definition is based on your body, you will be weak. These are the people who give in at the times of hardship. But the people who persist and resist, even if they are captive, that actually, when they are prisoners, their guards are the captives, and they are the free ones. The way you define yourself really defines your freedom, and defines your strength, and defines your life. Now I just want to get back to the issue of hierarchy, and this is, by the way, if some of you got lost, don't blame me, blame Umar. That's all follow from Umar's word. Yes? Sorry?
I don't understand what worship is. You keep saying you'll be praying, but you don't really get to it.
Okay, everything I said is worship. Worship means love. Worship means love. Now human beings, and let me, okay. I needed actually some kind of, no problem, I'll try to explain it. You know, we think human beings are one level of consciousness. Now I'm not talking about psychology, conscious and subconscious, I'm not talking about this. But human beings, we do not process our communication with the world around us and our thoughts according to one level. No, no. We have something deep inside our hearts, and that's the basic level that controls all our lives. And I said these are the two things Ibn al-Qayyim defined. Your power of comprehension to make not necessarily an image, but an impression about something. And that's your faith, that's your aqeedah. That's the definition you have of things. The definition, the impression you have about yourself and about your mission in life, about your passion in life, about your ultimate love. That image gives rise to motivation, which is the drive to do something, the drive to achieve a result. Okay? What is the ultimate drive of Muslims? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love of Allah. Because we are designed, if we are created to worship, the best thing we do is worship. The car is made for driving. The best thing the car does is driving. A pen is made to write. The best thing you do, or the best function a pen could serve is what? Writing. By default. Humans are created for worship, so naturally, what do? Worship. Without being conscious about it. But the choice is, you either worship Allah or you worship something else. That's the choice you have. You don't have, by the way, you don't have any choice whether to worship or not. Humans worship by nature. That's what worship is. You form an impression about something, your heart identifies with it, so you define yourself around it. And then the drive, this dynamic power is created in your life, in your heart, and it pushes you to do all the things that you do in your life. It all emanates from that. That's what worship means. So it's your ultimate love. So if you define yourself around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this underlies all your activities. And it underlies your definition of things. This is why, for Muslims, salah. Why is salah important? Why is salah important? Because it serves your love of Allah. Isn't that true? Brings you closer to Allah. You exercise your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is salah to a non-Muslim? What does it mean? The Muslim way of praying. What does it mean to a Muslim, to a non-Muslim? Nothing. Why? Because it doesn't serve their purpose. And even if they look at you praying, they say, what's that kind of, what is this guy doing? As one guy, I remember I was praying and there was a non-Muslim passing by. And he said, I had my friends sitting around. He said, why is your friend headbutting the ground? What is he doing? And they don't understand because it doesn't serve their function. What serves their function, okay, for example, if they define themselves around enjoyment of this life, anything that helps them enjoy is important. So this is how they define things. This is how they give value to things. If it serves the ultimate purpose. Is it a bit clearer? Okay. So the words we use, motivation, purpose, passion, meaning, these are common words. This is all worship. It's all worship. Identity. We think identity is a psychological thing and they have to go through background, color, language. All these are secondary. And this is why Islam has the power to transform your life, because it changes the very basis of your life, which is your definition. It changes your definition. So this is how we define ourselves. We define ourselves around our ultimate love, our ultimate passion. This is how you define yourself. And once you define yourself, it becomes the central point or the focus point based on which or against which you define other things. So if you look around at your friends, who are the people you hang around with, the people that you love, if they are not righteous, if they don't bring you closer to Allah, there's a problem with your definition. Because if you choose your friends based on enjoyment, a huge part of your definition of yourself is based on enjoying yourself. And that's the wrong definition. And this is why if you, for example, set up some kind of a trip or some kind of an activity that will bring you so much pleasure with your friends, and it doesn't work out, you feel frustrated. Because it has affected your definition of yourself, somehow. The Muslim, when does the Muslim get frustrated or feel bad? When they miss a prayer, when they miss a fast, when they fall in sin. Why? Because it works against their definition, against their passion, against their purpose, against their meaning. We say, many times people say, I'm searching for a meaning for my life. What is meaning? It's definition. It's your passion. So if you want to transform a person, make sure they change their definition. You don't need to work on how they behave and how they do. This is all easy. Don't be bothered with the details. Focus right at the center. Everything will follow suit. Everything will change automatically. So this is very important when we deal with our kids. Most of them are sleeping. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. I wish you got this on camera. Okay. It's very important when we raise our children to help them define themselves around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what identity means. So let's forget about language, color, background, country of origin, all of this stuff. Believe me, all of this is irrelevant. All of this, your physique, your body, don't define yourself around this. Define yourself around love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the way, some people might say, okay, how can I increase my love? You are created to worship Allah. You are created to worship Allah. So there's no need, it's not rocket science to know how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are created to love Allah. Ibn al-Qayyim says in many times in different books, he says, إِنَّ الْقَلْبَ خُلِقَ لِمَحَبَّةِ اللَّهِ وَالشَّوْقِ إِلَى لِقَائِهِ وَالْأُنْسِ بِهِ. Your heart is created to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to yearn to His meeting, to be eager to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to feel the closeness to Him. This is what your heart is created for. So naturally it's inclined to that. But where do most people go wrong? Anything wrong you do, anything wrong a human being does, do you know what it is? It is something that is supposed to be given, or it is designed to be given to Allah, we just give it to somebody else or someone else or something else. Your heart is designed to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So naturally, your heart is always looking around for that love. It's looking around for that love. Most people are short-sighted to get stuck with physical things around them. They either love a person, they love finances or money, wealth, or they love a house, or they love reputation, which is a bit more complicated, or they love something intellectual. People love the science they study, the discipline they study. People love their jobs. Not only, by the way, some people love their job not for money, because it gives them a sense of fulfillment. So they have defined themselves around that activity. That's short-sightedness. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts with which they cannot comprehend. They have eyes with which they don't see. But actually they see physical things. But your eyes are not meant only to see physical things. You have to see beyond. The world around you is supposed to lead you to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what your heart is created for. That's what your heart is created for. So don't get stuck with the physical world, tangible world around you. Have a deeper insight. Have a deeper insight to define yourself around Allah. So once your heart gets to know the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, learn them. The Quran is full with names and attributes. Most of the verses in the Quran end up with names and attributes of Allah. Do you know why Allah created the heavens and the earth? Why? Why did Allah create the heavens and the earth? For what? The answer is in the Quran. No answers? For test and reward, which is good. That's the right answer, but I need something to serve out my purpose here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the end of Surah At-Talaq, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawat, Allah who created 7 heavens, وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنْ, and 7 earths, يَتَنَزَّلُ الْأَمْرُ بَيْنَهُنْ, the command of Allah descends from the heavens to the earth. Why? لِتَعْلَمُوا, so that you know أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. So that you get to know and realize that Allah is capable of doing everything. And that Allah's knowledge has encompassed everything. So Allah created the heavens and the earth, so that you and I know that He is the omnipotent, the almighty, and He is the all-knowing. Everything in the heavens and the earth was created for that. Imagine. Just to help us know Allah. Because once we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we define ourselves around Him, or around love of Allah, and once we do that, everything in our lives will be alright. No one can get through to you. No one can destroy your self-esteem. No one can overcome you. And your whole life will be in harmony. Everything will make sense. Everything will be totally in a state of organization. So just let me finish with the issue of hierarchy of motivation. At the bottom, at the root of all motivation in your life should be the love of Allah. And this is so powerful. This is so powerful because once you use anything that is made for a different purpose, or purpose different than what it was made for, it doesn't function well. It doesn't function well. If you use this projector or this camera, for example, to store, use it as a cup, the lenses, use it as a cup and drink water with it, it doesn't serve that purpose right. It's not suitable, it'll give you trouble, it'll give you problems. But if you use it exactly for what it was made for, this is when you get optimum performance. The same with human being. Once you are created to worship Allah, to love Him, and that drive be at the root of your life. Once you do this, your whole life will be in harmony and powerful. So all your energies are channeled into one direction, no contradiction, no waste of energy, no waste of time, and this is where you reach optimal performance. And this is why I believe if Muslims really and truly understand what Islam is, and align themselves, align their goals and their passions around the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahi, we can outperform anybody else, even at work. Even at work, we can outperform any human being. Our performance will be different. And we quoted the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, basically, that one person will be able to overcome 10 people. We can really do that. Now, what we will have, inshallah, and I thought this introduction would be shorter, Allah al-Musta'an. But inshallah, what we will be doing, inshallah, is the dardasha, that we want to see what is the future of our ummah. Many times, we lose our way. We don't define ourselves around, totally, completely around the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we will try to do now is define ourselves around love of Allah. Don't think that you will lose by defining yourself around Allah. You will suffer from some withdrawal symptoms. If you have defined yourself, by the way, most people don't define themselves around one thing. We have a mixture of things. And this is why this makes us weak. Because it saps our energy. We are distracted. If you define yourself around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you won't lose anything. You will gain even more. And I promise you, you will gain even more. Sometimes you feel it difficult to detach yourself from something you have defined yourself around for most of your life. It's difficult. There will be some withdrawal symptoms. But believe me, once you define yourself around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most of your other needs, your other ambitions, your other aspirations, most of them, by the way, are legitimate. But what we do, we put them in the place of the love of Allah. That's the mistake we do. But get the love of Allah right at the root of everything, and then there's a hierarchy. There's a beautiful alignment. Because this love of Allah, it allows your other ambitions, your other needs, even physical needs, even sexual needs, even financial needs, even needs for self-esteem and respect and reputation. All of these, by the way, are legitimate as long as you put them in the right place. And this is when you will get the best harmony in your life. But what we have to do is get the love of Allah right at the bottom, right at the roots. When I say bottom, I mean the roots. It's the foundation, the basis. Then it allows, there are slots for every other ambition you have. So it falls in place and it emanates from your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how you start to build that momentum. And it meets the momentum that is created by the heavens and the earth. And only then you will start to see the fruits that how Islam really transforms life, and Islam can really set everything in your life in a state of harmony and optimal performance. We can truly reach that. Now, do we have any time for adhan? Okay, just let me have, if we have any questions. Any questions? Now what we will do, we'll try to see how we can do this. At this time in which we live, by the way, our ummah suffers, by the way, not because of what the enemies of Islam do. Our ummah suffers not because the financial and the political state of the Muslim ummah. No. The problem and the illness is deeper than that. These are symptoms. These are symptoms. Now, most of us don't realize the personal responsibility and the contribution they can offer this ummah. We sort of belittle ourselves. We underestimate what we can do. Now, if we raise our level, of awareness to the fact that we can really contribute by achieving this model. And by the way, I didn't bring anything from my own pocket. I didn't bring anything from my own mind. What I'm saying now is there in the Quran and in the Sunnah, and it's present in the books of the early Muslim scholars. You can see it functioning, running through their lives. Read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's exactly the underlying theme throughout the events. That's the underlying theme throughout the lives of the great Muslims. You can find it there. The traces are there, but you just need to find them, bring them together, and organize them in a way we can relate to today. When the people of Quraysh, when the Prophet ﷺ told them, say La ilaha illallah, they fought him. One word. Now there are people who commit similar shirk, similar polytheism as the people of Quraysh, and they say La ilaha illallah, no problem. Why? Because they don't understand the meaning. Likewise, many times we read, but we don't understand the real meanings. So the reason I put it in that language is that this is the language we can relate to. Many times when we read translated books, and unfortunately even Arabs sometimes when they read the Arabic books, language has differed over time. It has become a bit different. And language is not only a word and its meaning, it's a package. It's full with associations. It's full with connections. It's full with connotations. So you have to understand it. If someone studies English and they don't study idiomatic English, You tell them, okay, give that person the benefit of the doubt. They start searching in their pocket, searching for the benefit of the doubt. They don't realize what's the meaning, you see? So language is a package. And this is why when we read translated books, we read, unfortunately, some kind of unrelated ideas that we cannot really practice. So what we will be doing, inshallah, in this dardasha, we have, mashallah, young brothers, young Muslims that I believe, and we've interacted before, mashallah. I believe that we have, inshallah, this level of awareness so that we can align our goals. There's no problem if you want to, by the way, reach financial independence. There's no problem if you want to become a brilliant doctor or engineer or successful businessman. There's no problem with that. All what you have to do as a Muslim is to align that, put it in its right slots, build that on your faith and love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so that your personal goals will ultimately lead you to the ultimate success. So it doesn't become an end in itself, but a means. And believe me, you will do better than making it your ultimate love. So we will try to see what our younger generation have and what our elderly have, because they have the experience. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Al-barakatu fi akabirikum." The blessings of Allah are in your elderly. So don't underestimate. Sometimes we can't relate to what they say. That's our problem. So we have to learn from their experience, from their expertise, from the knowledge that they have. And I would like to listen from you. I would like to listen from you. You live in this community, in this country. You understand it very well. You understand the social system, the legal system, the political system, and you know your own personal conditions. And I would like to hear some personal reflections, personal even ambitions. How can you personally align your ambitions and so that they are in harmony with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and by means of that we can really transform Muslim communities in the West to contribute to our ummah in general. Wallahi, we can do it. We can do it. And it's very simple. And you will get rewards collectively on the whole level of the ummah and even personally. Wallahi, you will be transformed. You will start to see a level of life that you have never enjoyed before. I'm not joking. And this is what Ibn al-Qayyim says when he said, Wallahi inna fi dunya la jannah, man lam yadkhulha lam yadkhul jannat al-akhirah. There is paradise on this earth. Anyone who fails to enter it will not be able to enter paradise in the hereafter. And that's the type of Jannah. This alignment, this momentum, this focus, no distraction whatsoever. It's so beautiful. This, unity of theme in your life is so powerful and so beautiful. And this is the meaning of worship. This is why worship is so sweet. And that's the sweetness of it. So in Islam we don't have positive and negative. We have either husn al-dhan in Allah, good thoughts about Allah, or bad thoughts about Allah. We have our own terminology. This is a different discussion. And I apologize for keeping the brothers here listening and giving them my back. I apologize about this. But inshallah, hopefully this discussion will be fruitful.